So was there a particular age where you looked at yourself and you said, wow, I'm getting old? I just celebrated my birthday last week, and while I only turned 27, people were telling me, hey, you're almost there, you're almost 30, you're getting old. And to me, 27, I'm the new young. I feel like I could do this 2 or 3 more times before I even start to even think or consider myself to be old. But for some people, they do have that age. For Chris specifically, it wasn't more so an age, but rather a traumatic event and experience that he had in his teenage years. So while he always cared about health, wellness, and lifestyle, this particular event really shifted his mind, really shifted his perspective. And from there, Novos was born. And when I tell you they focus on a host of different things, it is a host of different things, but all centered around just aging and what we can do to combat the speed up. But they do so as a PBC. And if you've never heard of a PBC like myself, it's a public benefit corporation. So while yes, they do have products, they do have services, they do have things that they want to promote and market and get out to the people, they do so without profit being at the forefront, because for them, free is the most important. The value, the information, the insight, and what you can do to really change your lifestyle and your habits, that's the most important. Because one of the biggest eye-opening things to me during this interview was that aging is 90% lifestyle and 10% genetics. Just think about that for a second. But while you do, enjoy episode 151, Slow and Steady. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Down to Business podcast. Did I mention that this is the best month of the year that I really love? One is my birthday month, July, but it's really just a great month. Arguably one of the fastest months, I think, from February, just logistically speaking. But I think because so much happens, because we celebrate so many friends, family, everything like that, I think that month really goes by fast. But nonetheless, the content is just going to come just as fast. I'm sitting down with Chris Mirabili today, and I really have to thank the team over at Oscar Hamilton for connecting us, one, but I also really have to give a big shout out to Chris for just the turnaround time. I found out that we're both in Florida, so as y'all can see, the nice background, the sun is hitting the light, everything like that. But very happy that we were able to connect. Very happy for him to really come on here and give y'all his spiel, touch a little bit of everything. Because after going through his bio, really checking out the website, checking out what he does, both personally, professionally, everything of the sort, I was thoroughly impressed. And I think that he'll have some gems for people out there today, but he'll also have some insight, and he could really help you, help a friend, help a family member, even help a friend of a friend. So definitely just listen up, tap in, and I'm glad to hear what he has to say. So Chris, how are you today? How's everything on your end?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me. It's a great opportunity to speak to you and your audience.
Good. So one of my boys actually just asked, "Where are you?" And you could wear a sweater in June. So look, I would say me. I'm just a little bit of a different person. It gets cold where I record, so I keep the sweater on me. But nonetheless, I'm always calm, cool, and collected. So the weather, it doesn't really get too much to me. But Chris, okay, so I know we're gonna have some people on my end. We're gonna have some people on your end. We're gonna have some people in between who may know neither one of them. So to get everybody on the same page, to really start everybody on that even playing field, can you one just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then can you two just tell us what brings you on the Down to Business podcast today?
Sure, happy to. So, I am originally from New York. I grew up in Long Island. And when I graduated high school, I went on to study business at NYU Stern, the business school in New York City. Um, I've always been entrepreneurial. When I was 15 years old, I started programming for a company in New York City. And I've also, something that's common across my life is I've always been interested in health and wellness and nutrition and exercise and so on. So since I was 12 years old, I started working out. I picked up an issue of Men's Health magazine. And when I was 16 years old, I was suddenly stopped in my tracks, both on the entrepreneurial journey and my exercise journey, which was caused by a brain tumor. I was on a school trip in New York City, and I suddenly started feeling dizzy and faint. And next thing I knew, I woke up with blood all over my shirt. And it turned out I had severed my tongue during a seizure. And they rushed me to the hospital, and they gave me a CAT scan, and they found, as the doctor put it, a large mass above my left temporal lobe, which is basically above my left ear. And it was growing for probably 6 or 7 years, and it was larger than a golf ball, and that's what had caused the seizure. We had no idea that it was growing over that time. And fortunately, it was removed, and I could, I lived to tell the story. Though, I joke with people sometimes, like, if I forget something, I forget their name, it's because half of my brain is missing. Um, But with all of that said, that kind of planted a seed in my subconscious mind for what I now work on. So if we fast forward after Stern, I went into private equity banking. It was this great job on Park Avenue, and it wasn't for me. The paycheck was there, but my heart wasn't in it, and so I quit after 1 year, and I became an entrepreneur. I started a company, a social media company called Hotlist, and had a lot of ups and downs. Some of the ups included being opening up NASDAQ, the stock market, and being plastered all over Times Square's billboards. And some of the downs were eventually the business imploding. We had an acquisition offer from a global company, and they ultimately pulled the plug out of that deal, and we weren't able to keep the business open. So I've seen the ups, I've seen the downs, and everything else in between. And what I work on now is a company focused on my passion of health and specifically longevity, how to slow down aging. So there's been a lot more research in the past decade about what causes us to get older than we had done probably in all of history combined. And so we now understand from a scientific perspective, why do we get older? There's specifically biological reasons. There's 12 of them that are emphasized. Things like mitochondrial health and stem cell senescence, and there's a whole host of other things. And we, as a company, focus on ways to slow down that process, along with scientists at Harvard and MIT that study this. And we create over-the-counter formulations for people like you and me to be able to use.
That was a journey. That was quite the story. I'm always, I love really starting every episode off with that question because one, I never know what I'm gonna get. I never know how deep we're gonna get. I never know what's gonna trigger one thing because even sometimes as you're talking, it makes you kind of fast forward or rewind a little bit or not give one detail without the other. But to essentially really always hear and see how people develop their passion or how people really dove into what they are in today, man, it's always just so amazing. So one, prayers to you just for everything that was going on, everything that you went through, everything that you're able to go through, and now even like you said today, joke about it and just be lighthearted more so because that's not the easiest thing, especially to it just had to happen out of nowhere. And then doctors tell you that, and at that young age, we don't even think about tumors. We don't think about really tumors at all. But to really have it that young, I commend you a lot and take my hat off to that. So when it comes to age, I really started to smile when you said that because man, I feel like there's so much out here about it. There's so many just the home remedies or just the over the counter or just what you can do or what you can't do or what's just inevitable no matter what happens. So for your approach, how you took it to where you are today. Was there a specific reason why you chose to go the route that you did? Because I don't know. I feel like it's a thing of who you talk about or who you talk to per se. Some people may say, look, it's going to happen regardless. It's nothing that I can really do. Maybe just take care of my skin, eat some fruits, eat some vegetables, mind my business, drink some water. Other people may feel, well, hey, look, well, I did this and went here and got this done, this type of work, and now I'm looking like this, or I put this type of cream on, everything like that. Other people may, like yourself, say, okay, well, let's go more so scientific route. Let's really see what's going on, what's happening. Let's dive a little bit deeper. So why specifically did you go this way? Was there something that kind of just went off in your head? Did you trial and error other like methods or elements and processes and things and it kind of led you to this? What was really that like for you to get into how you are and why y'all chose essentially to dive into it at the angle that y'all did?
I feel like I can answer your question from 10 different perspectives. So let me start at one of them, I guess. I'll start with the timeline, like the journey I took. So I mentioned I was interested in health since I was 12 years old, and but when I was into health at that age, it was really superficial. I just wanted to be attractive to the girls in school. I wanted to do well in sports. Like, I mean, that's really the reason I was into exercising and eating healthy and so on. And then it wasn't until I got very sick and I was laying in a hospital bed, not sure if I would wake up the next day after the operation, that the idea of mortality and how fragile life is really sunk in. And it never does for 15-year-olds unless they go through an experience like this. And for many people, God bless them, they can go into their 30s, 40s, 50s and never even contemplate that, right? And so that's when my perspective on health really it evolved. It became a lot more sophisticated. It went from just that superficial side to the biological side, like avoidance of disease. That is truly what health is for you to be avoiding anything going wrong, any disease, and being optimized. So, but it wasn't really clear to me to address aging specifically until I got older. So this happened in my teens. In my 20s, I was into biohacking, as they call it, like experimenting with different diets, different exercise routines, different supplements, always with a different goal in mind. Like maybe I wanted to improve my sleep, or I wanted to do better in the gym, or I wanted to be more focused on work and be able to work more hours and be more productive during that time. Always having a goal. But uh, when setting these goals, I was also asking myself the question: is what I'm doing good for me in the long term too? And this is a type of question that most people don't ask, but because of my experience as a teen with the tumor, it planted that seed in my head of always wanting to make sure I'm not sabotaging myself in the long term. Because believe it or not, a lot of things that are considered healthy are only short term healthy, only short term focused. Even the medical establishment, if we're really honest with ourselves, if you go to the hospital or the doctor, you have some sort of problem, they're really focused on just fixing that problem, and then they send you off, but they don't really think about like the long-term consequences. I'll give you a very simple example. If you have indigestion and the doctor gives you a prescription antacid to try to cope with that, those antacids, the pharmaceutical companies specifically say this is for short-term use only. How many times do you have a doctor who says you should only be using this for a month? We need to fix your diet and make sure that you eat healthy so you don't need this anymore, because there are long term negative consequences of taking this drug. You don't hear that. It's really just about like, oh, you have a problem, let's try to fix it, and not think about what's going to happen 10 years, 20 years from now. So these are all of the different considerations going on in my mind. Now, why specifically uh, the approach that we're taking? So, our approach, as you mentioned, it's very science focused. We're working with some of the world's top scientists who study these biological causes of aging. But with that said, everything that we put forth to consumers and to the general public, for that matter, is natural. And most of the stuff we put forth is actually free, things that you don't have to buy from us. So I started Novus as what's known as a public benefit corporation. This is a legal structure where I have the flexibility to do things that are not always maximizing profit, which is what a typical business is always focused on. Although I want profit, I can also do things that are just good for the public at large. And so, as part of that, we offer tons of free content, free tools. We just want to educate the general public because we want everyone, no matter where they are in their life, in their financial capacities, and so on, to really start to understand that aging, believe it or not, is 90% lifestyle, only 10% genetic. And so you're not born into it. There is far more that you can do than most people realize. And we want to make people aware of this and then give them the resources and tools they need to empower them to take it into their own hands. And if they want to buy our products, great. It makes me happy. But if they don't, I'm still happy if they're improving their health.
I love that. I love that because it really goes to show the value behind what you're doing and why you're really doing it. A lot of people, a lot of things can really fall into that category of consumerism, and people just want to make money at the end of the day. Look, put this on a shelf, put this on a website, put this somewhere where everybody can see it, get it to the masses. We need as many sales as possible, and ultimately, yes, you could still operate like that, have a great message, but your true form behind it is to make that money, to bring in that revenue, to do more, to scale, everything of the sort, not really realizing that you could be putting out a lot of value. And with that value, with that information, a lot of my followers, they ask me, well, I know for a fact one of their favorite F words is free. It's one of mine, and next to food, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like to be able to come across somebody who has put in the legwork, put in the foundation. If that's not something I got early on,
from you is definitely something I'm picking up now. It's something that this wasn't just you figured it out just like that. You tried and errored and it only took one or two times and you got it just like that. No, it was realizing the 90-10 rule in a sense, because I didn't even really know that. And had you really probably asked me about numbers and things, I would have thought it was really almost, they were almost even. But the fact that lifestyle can play such more of a, well, granted, I did know that lifestyle plays a heck of a part, but I also realized that I didn't realize how 10% was really just things that are out of our control, or just that genetics and things like that. I would have put a higher number on that. So even that alone will even prompt me to do more research or prompt me to dive into things a little bit differently, just because it's just like, wow, well, if that's something that they can teach me, or if that's something that I didn't know to begin with, oh, well, who knows, the deeper and deeper I dive into this, the more that you guys offer, the more that kind of comes about, because it's not just a thing of two that you guys are just offering stuff that you have right now and that's it. No, I'm pretty sure that as you continue to research, as you continue to work with these scientists, these doctors, everything of the sort, you find out more, you learn things, you add things, you subtract, and you're ever changing. We're living in a world where it really has to be ever changing, no matter what field you're in. Business owner, entrepreneur, 9 to 5. You could wake up one day and operate totally different than what you did the next day. Or now you have to adjust, or now we're in a pandemic, or now we can't travel the same, or now we have to wear masks everywhere. So I feel like where you're at in this space too, it's also keeping you on your toes and keeping the people around you on your toes just the same, because you have to make sure that you're giving the most up to date but true information. People fact check like no other these days, and people will come up with their own opinions just reading or on social media or just talking to one source and letting that be the end all be all. So I really like what y'all are doing, but like you said, even take it a step further. Well, if people like what y'all are doing, they're resonating with the information, they're signing up for all the information, everything that's coming at them. Oh, well, let's take it a step further. Now let's bring the products out. So I really do love that approach, because it really goes to show me the authenticity behind the brand, behind the people behind the brand, and being able to really truly put a name and put a face to things. I feel like a lot of times we think about these big companies, these corporations, these people that we shop with day in and day out, and we don't necessarily know who's behind it, the face behind it, the name behind it, what they're doing, what they went through, what their story was. But to be on here today and really have you get transparent from the very beginning of the interview and really talk about why this propelled you into what you are, I love that. And I think it even allows you to resonate that much more with the people around you, their consumers, your audience, my audience, everybody far in between. So now, one of the terms that I was just so impressed by, one, maybe because I love numbers and this is a shape, and so it just makes me think about numbers, was the longevity hexagon. Now, you touched on the word longevity a few times now, and for those people who don't know, hexagon has 6 sides. I haven't been in math in quite some time, but I still do remember that. Now, when it comes to how this was constructed, how this came about, well, one, what does the longevity hexagon mean? I feel like two, I guess even to take it a step further, but go back at the same time, for just to get everybody clear cut, concise, no holes in the wall or anything like that. What does longevity mean when it comes to what you're doing and what you're working towards and what you're putting out there? Why is that word so important?
Yeah. I was actually going to suggest we talk about that as well. So thank you for asking the question. So uh, longevity is the idea of maximizing your lifespan and your health span as much as possible. So a lot of people think like, why would I want to live into my 90s or 100 years old? Why would I want to do that? I'm going to be frail and sick and life's not good, right? Well, that's assuming you don't have a good health span. That's assuming you get sick when you're 60 or 70 with heart disease or cancer or type 2 diabetes and so on. But the goal of longevity is to extend your health span as long as possible. Imagine if you could live until you're 100 years old and be fit and you're dancing on the dance floor and you're in high spirits and you're basically the same version of yourself that you are now, just more experienced, more evolved, right? You've lived for more years. That's the goal of longevity. So as we like to say at my company Novos, we say to be younger for longer. That is the goal, to keep you as young as possible for as long as possible. So with that said, you asked specifically about the longevity hexagon. This was a project that we put together to try to simplify all of the different aspects of longevity. Now, it's actually still somewhat technical. It's somewhat more advanced for somebody who's already in the world of longevity. In other words, they've already been educated, they know the basics, and so on. But the different components of the longevity hexagon are supplements. So within supplements, you've got general health supplements. These are the things like your multivitamin or fish oil and so on. And then there are longevity supplements. So these are the things that Novos, as a company, we specialize in. These are ingredients that have been shown across different animal species to extend the maximum lifespan of those animals. In human research, they're shown to confer health benefits to people or reduce negative aspects of health, if you will, and so on and so forth. So these are the things that are really targeted to improve health span and lifespan, as I mentioned before. Then another part of the hexagon is nutrition. Within nutrition, there is a lot to cover. So everything from the foods that you eat and the foods that you don't eat, of course, but as well as like the time spent with not eating. So, or the period within the day that you're eating. So there have been studies, a lot of people don't realize this, where two people are fed the same things, like identical twins, let's say, fed the same foods, but one person is eating from the moment they wake up, let's just say at 8 a.m., until the moment they go to sleep, let's just say at 11 p.m. And like throughout the day, they're eating. And then the other person is eating within a smaller eating window of, let's just say, only from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 12 p.m. to 6 p.m., something like that. Eating exactly the same foods, the person who's eating in a smaller eating window is healthier, metabolically healthier. Their blood sugar doesn't go as high, which, high blood sugar eventually can lead to type 2 diabetes. Their triglycerides and all of these blood metabolic markers that are associated with heart disease, diabetes, even Alzheimer's, and so on, they're healthier. They lose weight compared to the other person. There's just a whole host of different benefits that come from something as simple as changing your eating window, as they call it. So, and then the other aspect kind of related to that is fasting, the idea of going an extended period of time without eating food. Throughout evolution, humans have gone without food. You have feast and famine. You can read about it in any religious text, right? Like there are periods in which there's a famine and you hardly have any food. And we've evolved with this. But now in modern society, we always have food. Always. We're overfed is now the issue, not that we're underfed. And so being overfed leads to certain biological processes being turned on in the body that basically make the body kind of sloppy and it doesn't maintain itself as well. And eventually, the body kind of just like gives out and it gets sick, and then eventually one would pass away. Whereas when you have these periods of famine, or in the modern context, just fasting, you go say a day without eating, or some people go 2-3 days without eating. Like we can discuss how it's actually more achievable than it might sound at first. Different biological processes turn on. And these processes are actually things like, for example, cleanup, cellular cleanup, where it's almost like the garbage trucks going through your cells and taking away all of the waste products, which if you're always eating, the body's not very efficient at that. But when you stop eating, the body knows which cells are defective, which cells are not functioning properly. The body's very smart about that. So even things like cancerous cells are more likely to be detected by the body and removed when you're in these fasted states than if you're chronically overeating. So that's the second part of the hexagon. There's four other parts. I figure I'll pause there in case you have some questions.
Well, I think that was really insightful because even as you're explaining these parts, there to me it's almost like an umbrella. And under the umbrella, there are still so many different things that you have to touch on, and what you're eating, what you're not eating, the windows, the scenarios, just the longevity versus the what's natural, what you need right now. And so I really do love that, and I love how y'all focus on like kind of what's going on now, but I like how y'all take what's going on now and you also think about it with the end goal in mind, almost as if you're kind of thinking about where we want to be, what we want to think about that 90, that 100, that years old, and then working back to figure out what we need to do through each almost decade in the sense of our life to figure out what's the best, how do we operate from there and everything like that. So no, honestly, the only thing that I would really question or it kind of just makes me wonder as you're talking about it is, does this does this hexagon per se evolve or change depending on your age group, or is this pretty much applied from a set time, and does it really, is it relevant to where you are in life in a sense? And I guess to make more sense of that question, is my 26-year-old self operating off the same format of a hexagon as a 60-year-old would or 70-year-old would? Are we both under the same hexagon, just targeting different things at the same time?
Well, what I would say is that perhaps the hexagon isn't the best framework to think of what you're specifically asking about in terms of how the recommendations or advice for you might differ from, say, your 60-year-old mother or something, right? So, when it comes to that specifically, we as a public benefit corporation, we're building different tools to try to help people. So, for example, we just launched, it's in beta right now, but you can still access it on the website. If you go to novoslabs.com and you click on My Account and you sign up just with your email, you don't have to pay for anything. Within there, there's a questionnaire, and it will take about 10 minutes to complete that questionnaire. And once you do, you get longevity recommendations, and they're categorized by red, yellow, and green. And red is what's most important for you specifically to focus on based on how you responded to the questionnaire. And then yellow is moderately important, and green is the stuff you're doing well. And for every one of those things, we include an article with scientific references so that you can click, you can learn more, and you can also see what we're basing this on. Because if you question it, we want to give you the answers, and then ultimately we want you to make the decision for yourself, right? So I would say that specifically for something, the topic of age, for example, there are certain things that might change. So, for example, protein intake. It's one point. So, overeating protein can actually potentially have a negative effect in the sense that it activates this biopathway known as mTOR. I won't go into the science behind it, but mTOR is associated with shorter lifespans. It's part of the reason why fasting, which deactivates mTOR or reduces it reduces the volume of mTOR, is associated with longer lifespans. So, but when you're older, it takes a lot more protein to be able to stimulate muscle growth or maintenance of muscle than when you're young. So, for example, at your age, if you have 25 grams of protein after a workout, your muscles are going to be stimulated and they're going to grow. Whereas somebody in their 60s, in fact, I was just reading a study yesterday about this. Somebody 65 and older who has that same 25 grams of protein is not going to see muscle growth. They need to have significantly more. So you kind of need to balance it. And so to your question, yes, there are certain things that might change as you get older. The advice might change, but the general ideas, the general concepts are universal. They apply to males and females regardless of age. And the other thing I would mention is that as much as we're talking about longevity and the ideal of what's far out into the future to make sure that you are as healthy as possible, all of the things that we recommend actually bring you short-term benefits too, like here and now. It's not like you're going to do these things and you have to wait 50 years to see the benefits. No, you're going to see the benefits now. You're going to feel more energy. Your skin is going to be better. Think about this. This hits home for a lot of people. Your face will age less. So if you imagine like your friends, and you fast forward 5 years, you're going to look younger than they do if they're not taking care of themselves the same way that you are, right? So these are all different things that you're going to feel here and now and in the coming months and years. You don't have to wait decades to see the benefits.
I know you're definitely raising some eyebrows, especially with that last point about getting older on the number side, but looking younger on the physical side. So no, but I really asked that question and wanted you to dive a little bit deeper, just because of two reasons. One, because I feel like with what you do, there can be a lot of drawbacks to things. People naturally hear it. They can listen to this interview. They can even read some of the things that you put out. And because it differs from what they're used to, what they've been doing, their MO, what even they were told by doctors and other people, they could automatically just not trust it and want to take a step back from it or take it with a grain of salt. But why I also told you to kind of dive a little bit deeper is also because I wanted people to realize that it's adjustments and that it's personable to you. Whereas, like you said, the blueprint, the principles will remain the same, but the inside, the meat and potatoes of everything, the subject lines and the by articles here, they can differ depending on where you are in life, what you're doing, and really even what you were exposed to beforehand. Because you could somebody who is coming into this or coming across this and relatively healthy, took care of their diet, took care of their eating habits, skin, everything like that, will not have as tough of a time transitioning into this as someone who this is like brand new to them. This is like information I've never heard before, information overload in a sense, or
Sure.
things that I were not doing, things that I was constant. Because even for me, I was trying to predict what you were saying about how the 25 grams of protein in the scenarios, and it threw me off when you said that the older person would need more. I was actually thinking that they would need less, but no, see, and that's just some of the things that we may think or we may hear, or just we make our own inferences, or we come up with our own just hypotheses and things like that. So no, I really wanted you to get deeper into that to also show people that it changes. That while it can be specific, while yes, we've laid out the law for you, you may need to do this, or we may need to highlight this a little bit more, or we may need to hone in on that side of the hexagon more than we need to do that. But ultimately, this is what we're encompassing, but you may fit at different points in that spectrum. So I love that a lot. Now, something that I'm really hearing with what you do, with what you're doing, with what you'll continue to do with Novos is the constant need to be in the know, the constant need to always be on your P's and Q's, to always have things researched. Like you said, you're working with these doctors and things are changing. Diseases are happening. Things are born. They're coming up with different solutions and treatments for some stuff that we've heard all of our life. So for everything that you're doing, for all the work that you've done to get up to this point, what would you say, if it's really even anything that you can tie it to, what keeps you really motivated? Because I could imagine that, like we even spoke about earlier in the interview, all of this trial and error, it can be frustrating sometimes. It can be time consuming. It can even lead to no end at times. At times that you can run trial after trial after trial, and it's just not yielding the results that you get. You can talk to a doctor, and things may not be as effective as what they said. But for you guys to have made it this far, essentially, for you guys to really continue to still be going, to be coining terms, to be teaching people, to giving away so much knowledge and information for free, why? Like, why do you ultimately? I heard about what you said in the beginning about the brain tumor, about how you were always focused on health from exercise, and about how you even had to pause that. But day in and day out, waking up now and just looking at everything that you do for this company and everything that you guys are working on, people who you're partnering with and everything, what really keeps that going? What really keeps that ball rolling, that wheel turning, that light bulb always going off for you guys to want to seek more, help more, give more?
It's a great question. But before I was talking about how we're a public benefit corporation and how I want to try to help people with their health as much as possible. And as true as that is, at the same time, something else is true, which is that I am very selfish. And I'm very selfish in the sense that I want to live as long and healthy as possible. And I am motivated every day in learning as much as I can and trying to innovate and to prove out our products as much as possible for my own sake, right? Like I want to be able to live as healthy and for as long as I can. But then by extension, there are friends and family that I love and care about, and I want to then give them access to this. And then beyond that, like just society at large, like I know I lost my mother to pancreatic cancer while working on Novos when I first started the company. And the difficulty of going through an experience like that and seeing somebody in the pain that she was in and the pain that I was in, witnessing it and experiencing loss, like we all go through it, and it's not a pleasant experience for anyone. It's incredibly painful, and I was extremely close to my mother, and so the thought of being able to extend healthy lifespan, like whatever that means. Does that mean, if there was one extra day that I had with my mother, that would have been wonderful, right? So if we can add extra days or weeks or months or years to people's lives, the amount of happiness that can bring. And to that point, my vision for Novos is, if we succeed at this, this would be an amazing accomplishment, is to add 1 billion years of healthy life to humanity. So that's not going to be necessarily purely through selling our products. A lot of it will be through information, through knowledge, which will be completely free, but through communication channels like yours, to be able to communicate this to people, that there is a lot more to health than you may have realized. You have far more control over your health than you realized. There's a lot of things you can do that you may not have thought you can do, like narrowing your eating window. Like, all right, maybe you have a really hard time to get rid of the unhealthy foods from your diet, and you've struggled with this your whole life. But if you could, instead of eating from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., you were able to go from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., you've already made the step in the right direction. And then maybe 11 a.m. and so on, and gradually getting, step by step closer. Another thing that I was thinking of when you were asking the question is, uh, you brought up the point of like medical doctors, and they give their perspectives on things, and everyone has their own beliefs on what is healthy and what is not. What I would say to that is, first of all, that scientific insights, the things that scientists are discovering in the laboratory or in even clinical settings, there was a study published where they found that it takes approximately 20 years to go from a laboratory to your medical doctor's clinic. In other words, MDs are way behind the curve in terms of what advice that they're giving. Now, that's not literally every doctor, but most doctors overall are behind the curve of the latest science. We as a company want to bring the latest science directly to you, the consumer, because you are the most accountable person for your own health, not your doctor. A lot of people kind of like hand it over to their doctor, expecting the doctor to take care of everything, but the doctor has 200 patients, more than that, right? Hundreds of patients, sometimes more than, well, more than 1,000 patients. They're not like thinking about you and all the details of your life. You have to be accountable for your own health. And so giving this information to directly to the consumer empowers you with the latest scientific information, which I will admit, it's not perfect. Science is a process, right? The only thing perfect is mathematics, right? Science is a process in which we're continually learning and testing hypotheses, and we're trying to get closer and closer and closer to being 100% confident in something, but we never get to 100%. We get to maybe 99% confidence, right? So with that said, it is constantly evolving. Things are constantly changing. But if we focus on science, we can be that much more accurate, that much more likely to end up with the outcomes that we're looking for. And as we've seen what science has been able to do for us, I mean, look at this communication we're doing right now, right? Like, this is science that has enabled this. It's no different in biology. We get closer and closer to the truth with each day that we do studies.
Absolutely, absolutely right. And I love that, just from the perspective of it. I feel like the what I'm getting from you, what I'm getting from Novos, what I'm getting from everything and that y'all are doing is saying, hey, we're not the end all be all. We're not telling you, hey, follow these rules. If you're not listening to us, you're done for. But we're also saying, hey, look, we pride ourselves on being in the know. We pride ourselves on delivering you the latest, the greatest, the most factual information at all. And all we can do is deliver it. All we can do is put it in front of you. All we can do is, it really goes back to one of those sayings that I love so much. You can bring a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink at the same time. You can put as much information as you want out there. You can give it all for free. Like we said, no cost, no charge, no nothing, not pestering you, bothering you, anything like that. But it's up to people to, one, read it. It's up to people to then disseminate it, spread it, however they do. Some people could listen to this interview and it really just go in one ear and out the other. It's a lot of information in this interview. Even when I listen back, I'll have to hone in some things, pause some things, rewind some things. Some people could listen to this interview and really start to take notes and really start to tackle one thing after the other. Maybe the hexagon stood out for you. You want to start tackling on that. Other people are going to listen to this interview and right away they're going to realize, hey, I'm not in the know about this, but I need to figure out something. I need to get better. I need to start somewhere. Chris Novos, they put a lot of different things out there, a lot of different resources out there. Let me find one. Let me start there. Let me see what works best. Let me follow up with my doctor. Let me ask them. Let me test and check things. So for people out there who may really be a novice to this, may really feel like this is information overload, may really feel like, hey, I really love what you're saying. I love what y'all are doing, but I just don't know where to start, where to go. What do you recommend for people really coming across Novos and what you guys are doing for the first time? What do you recommend for people who don't really know about longevity, but now after hearing you explain the importance of it and really the basis behind it, oh, now I want to find out more. What do you say and recommend to people who have no idea if they're doing things right, if they're doing things wrong. But at the end of the day, they heard that you want to bring 1 billion years to the human span of life, and they said, well, I want to make sure that some of my years are in those billion. What do you recommend to people? Where do they start?
Yeah, I would say start at novoslabs.com. Go to our blog. Um, on our blog, you'll see that we have one of the featured articles is How to Slow Down Aging, a Guide. This is a more high level article. You can also scroll down a little bit. I'm looking at it right now. There's another article, 60 Top Tips to Live Longer, Improve Your Longevity, and Slow Down Aging, doctor approved. It's an 8-minute read article. So we have a lot of this stuff, although we have on the one hand some articles that are more technical and complex. We also make a point to have articles that are more simple and entry level, if you will, right? We want to span the levels of sophistication and complexity. We want to bring people in with the simpler content, but then continue, like, as people become more knowledgeable, we want to still be by their side helping them to comprehend all of this. So I'd say start with that. Another thing they can do is we have a free ebook. It's about 110 pages long. It's fully scientifically referenced, like hundreds of references in there. But we talk about the hallmarks of aging, like what is biologically causing the aging. It's only like a paragraph or two per hallmark, just high level to understand it. But even if that's too much science for some people, if you skip ahead, you'll find like the top tips to slow down aging and a whole bunch of other articles in there that can be helpful for people. Another thing that might be interesting for people to check out is something called Face Age. This is a free tool that you just take a selfie, and then using AI technology, we're able to provide to you your facial age, your eye age, and then your skin health markers like pore size, skin wrinkling, skin inflammation, and so on. And then we give you links to articles on how to improve all of these different dimensions. So a lot of people, for one reason or another, they are not as excited about the health aspects of things, but they're excited about looking better in the mirror, right? So the way I look at it, as if like everyone has a different perspective, different values, and so on. Like however we can get someone started, I'm happy to bring people into this ecosystem, into this world of longevity and understanding that it impacts every aspect of you as a person. Like every organ is impacted by the decisions you make with your lifestyle, and there's clear things that people can do to easily improve their health span and their lifespan. So I would start with those different tools, and then the beta tool that I mentioned earlier. If they sign up for a free account, they can also answer the survey, and then they'll get all of the personalized recommendations. Now, just want to note that that's different than if you see on the top of our website, take our quiz. That's different than what I'm talking about with the personalized recommendations. You have to go set up an account, and then that's where you'll get access to it.
Got you. And I want y'all to notice one thing: everything that he said is free. He didn't put a price point on anything. He didn't tell you to buy this. He didn't tell you to order that. I know y'all heard him say take the selfie. I know y'all love taking pictures. So I would hope that a lot of y'all at least do that part. But no, it's really just amazing to hear. I even had people on my IG lives talking about the articles and how they sound very interesting. So it's always just amazing to hear, and seeing is really believing for people. Some people, you can tell them over and over again the importance of what to do or what's recommended or test studies, but sometimes you really have to put it in front of them. Really have to send them the link directly. Really have to say, hey, read this with me, or let's talk about it, or even find a friend or anything of the sort. So I love to hear everything that y'all are doing. I love how there's different strokes for different folks in a sense. Some people can do the selfie. Some people may want to do the beta. Some people may just want to straight into the articles and then figure out from there. So I feel like no matter where you really start in this journey, it can open up and amass so much information for you. And I think that's ultimately a great, just a great guide for y'all, a great really walkthrough for everything. So I want to also touch on a little bit too about just a message for the business owners and the entrepreneurs out there. Just speaking about your story, just hearing about everything that you've gone through, you've had, and my condolences as well to you as someone who lost their mother and someone who's close to their mother. I definitely do understand that as well. But I also hear within your story that it wasn't always a walk in the park. Everything didn't always make sense. Everything didn't always go your way. You know, you weren't just waking up and it was just, we're winning today. All this money is coming in. People are happy. Doctors are responding. Everything makes sense. Articles are good. Everything is tested. So I want to also talk about, too, just some of the words and even advice that you may leave for other business owners and entrepreneurs out there about just the highs and lows that come with this, just the industry, just doing something on your own, just maybe even stepping into a realm that a lot of people may not even believe in simply because they don't know, and not more so because it doesn't work, because what you're doing is not good. But sometimes miseducation for people just means I don't even want to touch it. I don't really want to get into it. I don't know anything about it. Let me steer clear. So what are just some pieces of advice or even some words that you can leave for other business owners and entrepreneurs out there as they just work through different stages and phases of their life, of stages of their business journey, of stages of their personal, financial, spiritual, everything of the sort?
Yeah, great question. I I can address it from like a a very high level, and then I can address it like tactically, like very specific things. I would say from a high level, you're correct. Like my entrepreneurial journey has had its highs and it's had its lows, and after hitting a low point in my late 20s with one of my ventures, the one I mentioned earlier, and having to shut that down. I went from the if the acquisition had gone through, I would have been in my late 20s, a multi millionaire, and ultimately the acquisition did not go through, and I had invested all of my savings into the business, kind of foolishly in retrospect, but I ended up with like practically $0 in my bank account. And at the same time, Hurricane Sandy had hit New York City, and I was kicked out of my apartment and by the city. When they finally opened the building back up because it was flooded, I got to my apartment and I saw that all of my valuable possessions were stolen. And so it was kind of like rock bottom for me, because like my self identity was very much invested in my company. People like my friends, class like high school classmates, when they would see me, they would say, "Hey, I heard about your business. How saw you on TV? How's everything?" And it's like, "Oh no, it's actually been shut down." Um, and then having nothing, no savings, nothing really to my name, and practically almost 30 years old, and then looking at my peers and seeing like, oh, they're starting families, and they're buying their first house or whatever, and it's like, what have I done? Right? That was a low point, and I was depressed. I became depressed for about a year and a half, but that depression was a gift. I have tended to find like the worst, the things that many people would consider to be the worst experiences to be the best experiences. Like my brain tumor was one of the greatest gifts I've ever received, because of how it changed my perspective on life. I'd say the same thing about this depression and losing the business, because at that time it then led me to, as I like to say, it was kind of like peeling back the onion and just going layer by layer, like shedding these layers of things that I believed I needed in my life, or I wanted in my life, or were truths in my life, and questions of like, well, why am I really an entrepreneur, and how much of it is about money versus me wanting to actually positively influence the world, and in what ways would I want to positively influence the world, and so on. Like just asking myself all of these questions, and during that period, I was just very honest with myself, and it transformed me in many ways. And if I didn't have that experience, I may not have started Novos now. And even if I did start Novos, it would have been coming from a different place. And having gone through that, it has, being a public benefit corporation, I'm sure came as a result partly of all of that reflection that I went through. So back to your question specifically, I would say to all of the entrepreneurs out there to understand that it's a long journey. It's not, there's no get rich quick schemes out there. I mean, it's probably one in a million that you would be one of those people. So don't bet on that. It's something that you need to be very committed to. You need to be very open minded. You need to uh, listen and learn, and not think you have all of the answers. You need to be capable of failing, and failing fast. So don't look at this as like everything needs to be perfect all the time. It's like you put things out there, and to that point about tactical advice, like the whole idea of MVP, minimal viable products, the idea of like putting something simple out there into the world, seeing how the world responds to it, listen to the feedback honestly, and then iterate and try to make slight improvements over and over and over again. Just continually do it day in and day out. Listen. improve, listen, improve. Something fails, that's okay, get back up and start over again. I think that it's essentially perseverance, but also coupling that with this MVP tactical mindset. I think that those are some of the most important things as an entrepreneur to get you through the rough times. And to that point about the rough times, be able to zoom out and look at the big picture. That big picture can be like, for example, every day I've got stressors in my business. Like there's something that goes wrong with ever big or small. There's always something, but and I can get caught up in that, or I can zoom out and say, okay, but look at how far we've come in the last 6 months, and look at all of these promising projects on the horizon and how big those are. Do these problems compare? No, not really. We're going to get through these problems. I'm going to forget about them once we get through them, and I'm going to be on to bigger and better things. So just setting that context, and then of course the context relative to everything else you have in your life. Even if your business fails and you have to shut it down, you have friends, you have family, you've got hobbies and interests, you've got your health. Hopefully, all of those things, and if not all of them, at least some really solid ones that will keep you afloat.
That's amazing, Chris. I echo so much of that, especially that last thing, just about really appreciating the things around you, and even sometimes the small things and the things that you've been able to achieve within the business. And it really makes those failures, those L's as we call them, it really makes them circumstantial. It really makes them minuscule. It really just here one day, gone the next type thing. You think about everything that's coming, all the impact and everything. But just as a human being, sometimes we just fall into that spell or that cycle or anything like that. So it's definitely a natural reaction and a natural response. So before we close out, before I tell people where to tap in, I feel like you gave the website and everything, but I always love to just wrap it up that way as well. Do you feel like there's anything that we haven't touched on today when it comes to Novos, when it comes to what you guys are doing, what the people can expect for the future outlook, or even anything that you want to leave the people with today, everybody who's tapping in, whether it be from my side, your side? I feel like, we've hinted on a lot today. Just from your side of things and what you're doing, but just on also to the principles behind things and what we could be doing, even if we don't tap all the way into Novos, but also with Novos where we could really go. So anything out there that you really want to leave the people
Sure,
with?
sure. So for the whole conversation, I focused on all of the free things that we're doing. So if you give me a second, I will talk about the paid for thing, essentially what the business is and how we make money. So if you consider longevity, there's all of these different pieces to the pie that add up to a long, healthy lifestyle or lifespan. That's everything from your sleep to your diet and when you eat and when you don't eat, like we talked about. It's your physical activity and exercise. It's stress levels and your psychology. It's your relationships. All of these things have been associated with longer lifespans if done the proper way. Um, Also, part of that is longevity supplements, certain ingredients that have been shown to be able to extend health span and lifespan. We sell we sell three products right now. Two are supplements and one is a test. The supplements are Novos Core and Novos Boost. Novos Boost is a simple formula. It's one single ingredient. It's called NMN. NMN, not M&Ms, which a lot of people say, but NMN is an ingredient that became very popular because of a longevity scientist at Harvard named Dr. David Sinclair. It's a New York Times bestseller, very active on social media. He's found a lot of really, him along with other researchers have found a lot of really powerful results from this specific ingredient. But the product that we're most proud of is Novos Core. It's 12 ingredients. It's the very first formula ever created in the world to address all 12 of the causes of aging simultaneously. Now, we didn't stop there. I mean, we based it on 400 different scientific studies to support the different ingredients we chose. But to our earlier point about me doing this selfishly and wanting to make sure that this actually works, right? I want to prove this out for myself and for everyone else. So we've done a lot of scientific studies, and we have others in the future that will release. But what we've found is that we're able to, in human cell studies, reduce DNA damage from irradiation, reduce DNA strand breaks from chemotherapeutics. We haven't published that one yet, but it's currently ongoing. reduce the size of senescent cells. So this is one of the causes of aging. These are zombie-like cells, and you want to reduce them as much as possible. So we were able to reduce them to the same degree as a prescription drug that's considered the gold standard for longevity. We were able to show that we reduce inflammation in human cells, which, as we know, inflammation is like the root cause of like so many diseases. And we also then ran something called an epigenetic test. This sounds very complex. I'll make it simple. So this is the third product that we sell. Is called a biological age test. We call it Novos Age. This is a crazy concept for a lot of people, but we have two ages. We have our chronological age. This is how old we are on our driver's license. And that's what everyone thinks of, birthdays and so on. But we also have a biological age. This is how old your body actually is. So if you've been abusing your body and smoking cigarettes a pack a day for years and so on, you're going to have an older biological age than the person who has eaten healthy and been physically fit and so on, right? And we see it. Like we all know the 60-year-old who looks 50 and the 60-year-old who looks 70, right? And when you compare that 70 to the 50, there's a huge difference, but they're both the same chronological age. And so there's literally a test that enables you to test how old you are biologically. We sell one. It was created by researchers at Duke University and Columbia University. It's not our own. We license it from them. And we can basically tell you how old you are biologically and your pace of aging. So are you aging 1 year per year? Or are you aging 0.8 years per year? And the goal with Novos is for you to slow down your pace of aging as much as possible. How do you do that? You follow the advice that we give. And if you so choose, you purchase the supplements that we sell as well. And so what I'll wrap up with is that we did a case study with a dozen people, ages 39 to 76, I believe, and half male, half female. They took the age test before taking Novos supplements. Then they took Novos Core and Boost for 6 months, and then we gave them the test again. And we found that 73% of the people, they slowed down their pace of aging, and 0% of the people had a faster pace of aging. So you would expect some people would have sped up because, if you have a dozen people, someone had a rough time in life, whatever, stressors, negative health, and so on. 0 people sped up and 73% slowed down. So it was really encouraging result, and we're doing more studies and so on. But that's the spiel. That's the whole, profit side of the business.
I like that. I like that a lot, and I'm encouraged. I'm encouraging everybody, especially when you said Duke. Look, I got all my North Carolina folks on here. Even some of y'all enrolled in Duke right now. So if something I know for a fact, something that you said today, even in listening back, I know a lot that you said right now resonated with me. But I know even when I play this back, it'll be a lot more that I'm just like, wow, that's really something. So, Chris, honestly, I take my hat off to you. I take my hat off to Novos, everything that y'all have done, really why y'all came into this business and what propelled y'all to really get this start. But I love what y'all are doing to just help the masses and really just show people and tell people really what's going on, what's happening, but also really putting a face to the name and everything like that, and really just being personal with people and not necessarily always just trying to sell them or our way or the highway. But I do also encourage everyone out there listening, tap in, whether it be an article, whether it be the beta test, whether it be the epigenetic test that he was saying, whether it be supplements, whether it be even you going to your own doctor, looking at your own habits. Because I feel like a lot of what we talked about today, it also starts internally. It also starts with you having to have that want to look better, want to feel better, want to age less, slower. I know I do. I know I want to know how fast I'm aging now, my biological age, because I know what my driver's license say, but I know how I feel sometimes. So I definitely will be tapping into that just the same. But yes, no, anything that we can do from the down to business side, please let me know. Always here to support. But last but certainly not least, please just let everybody know again one more time, best places to reach you, website, with the supplements, everything.
Sure. So novoslabs.com is the website. We're on all of the social channels, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter as Novos Labs. And then I have a personal blog. This is for those, the geeks in your audience that really like to get into the details about my personal results and so on. I didn't mention this, but I have very strong results for my pace of aging and biological age. So I'm 85 years old, and no, I'm just kidding. I'm almost 40 years old, and but I have biological age results that are in my late 20s. And the lab that runs the tests has said that they haven't seen results as good as mine before, and they've done this for thousands and thousands of people. So I thought it would be good for me to document my results and then my lifestyle and so on. So slowmyage.com is my personal blog. And then I'm on Twitter and Instagram as slowmyage.
All right, y'all. It's the best looking 85-year-old you're going to see on here. So, but Chris, thank you again. Big shout out to everything you were doing. Big shout out to the team over at Oscar Hamilton for being able to connect us. But to my side, to your side, to everybody in between, even tapping in for the first time, I thank you. I appreciate you. We love you. This has been another episode of the Down to Business podcast. Here with Tamar Turner.